Hello, hello.
What's going on?
Welcome. We are WAR. We are resilient. Myself, Mike Geary, and Travis Barrington of Oscar Mike Radio. I'm of Hell Shaven, as you can see by our nice little name tags underneath our faces here. And we're just back to chat about the latest going ons in the veteran community and the good, the bad. And, we try to stay positive here as well as we can. But a lot of times things are coming, crazy at us. So we just want to make sure that folks get the latest and try to have an unbiased look at what's going on.
For
A
sure.
couple things that I have seen this past couple weeks. I don't know if you've seen the article on Washington Post. It basically said that veterans are a lot of fraudsters in our ranks, claiming benefits at the VA to financial gain or things that they don't really have. And a lot of the things that they cited in their article actually had to do more with ratings that were if you get something and you get a 0% rating, so
Right.
it's covered. You'll get health care provided for it, from the VA for the rest of your life, but you're not getting a monetary gain, nor are you really getting, any other financial, input from it. And a lot of the things they quoted in this article were just that, were things, guys that have, acne, guys that have, scarring. Like if your scars don't cover, 30% of your body or more, you don't really get a high rating for it. So a lot of the stuff they posted in this article was very, disingenuous, and like the people that wrote this article, it's now going to be a series of articles. The second one just launched today. I haven't had the chance to read it all yet, but the first one was written. It had three authors, all from the Washington Post. One of the guys had been the author of the Afghanistan papers, and he also did the who was the guy that was scamming like the admirals and stuff? Fat somebody.
I remember that briefly, but I don't know the story close up and personal.
Yeah, but this was uh, a a journalist who published these things, and they authored books about it, and you'd think that they would do a little more you know digging into these claims that they're making, and the way that they would they make a comment and then say like the veterans would claim this so they could milk the system, and it's like when you say something like that and you say that they're milking the system, you're adding a negative connotation to them immediately, and you're making your reader believe that this is what all veterans are doing, instead of just the few that are out there. There's bad apples wherever you go, and it's unbelievable to see a publication like the Washington Post put together this hit piece on veterans benefits to try to say that we're out there scamming a system, and like wondering why so many more of today have these claims. And it's you wonder why. It's because we were just in 20 years of war, and we have guys that came back home and survived things that previous generations and previous conflicts would have died on the battlefield due to combat care not existing, and not being able to get them to the treatment that they needed. So it's really sad to see how they've written everything up. Carrie's saying, "Hey, can't stay long. It's about to drive home. Want to stop by and say hello. Boost the algorithm. Yada yada. Glad you're still doing what you're doing. Thank you very much. Appreciate that." Let me see. Carrie's she's helped develop and start a few nonprofits that do a lot with veterans and peer support, and got me involved with an organization, and was able to show me how veterans can create a warm line where people can come in and they can request help on servers like Discord, and be able to talk and ask for help from a fellow veteran. It may not be instantaneous, but it's quick enough where they're able to get their emotions and their feelings off their chest and to speak with somebody who's been through the same situation. And, I think those warm lines are doing a lot of good for our veteran community.
So here's what I think about this.
Mm-hmm.
Are there veterans who are trying to scam the system? The answer is yes. Of course there are. Just like there are, herd bird active duty service members who don't represent the uniform well. There are certainly veterans who will take advantage of anything they can get their hands on.
Yep.
And it's regrettable and it's sad and it's not right. I don't know about you, but I will get fired up about this and really want to say we go after it when we put as much emphasis on this as we do other things. And for every one veteran that might be able to skim off the VA, and I'm not saying it's right, there are 10 others, as you know, Michael, who have been suffering in silence for years, decades, with crippling injuries with no apparent help, no care whatsoever. So, okay, we have a problem. And I don't know about you. Every time I go see my VA doctor, I know that I'm being reevaluated against my claim and seeing if there's any change for it. I know that anytime someone can do an audit on my claim, and I'll have to go do a comp and pain review again, whether I want to or not. And if you don't, that tells them that, hey, there might be a problem there. And so I told him, and I said, you know what? What I had to do, the time I took off work with vacation time or sick time to take off work to go to comp and pen, drive on my own dime to the VA, get assessed, and realizing that I'm being treated like I'm a liar and I'm a malingerer. I no one gave me anything. I got hurt. I got messed up.
Yep.
And a decision was made to assess a dollar amount to that. But again, I'll tell anybody, you can get upset at me for advocating for veterans and saying they deserve rightful VA benefits. And understand that I understand. Look, there's probably going to be some that get through. Absolutely, there's going to be somebody who scams the system. There's a guy in Providence, Rhode Island, who was getting paid off to make claims, and plus we had that one guy in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey area just rubber stamping claims. That's not the veteran's fault. That's not the veteran's fault. When you have, his name is Michael Dara. He got in trouble because he got caught in Providence, Rhode Island for, demanding money to push through claims. I have receipts, folks. I can get you the links for this. I will here in a second. And then the other, just recently, the raider in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey area who, he was like 90,000 claims. He just, rubber stamped.
Yep. It was, I want to say it was in the hundreds of thousands that he had rubber stamped. He was doing an average of, 4 minutes per claim he was spending. And that's because above him, he had the people telling him he's got a quota he needs to meet. And, him trying to meet that quota, it's, he was going with the, I'm just going to stamp everybody good to go. And now, these veterans, are going to have their claims readjudicated and reviewed, all not to the fault of the veteran themselves.
Exactly. So
drive safe, Carrie. We will talk to you soon. Thank you for checking in.
No texting and driving. No watching this and driving, Carrie. But again, the veteran is not at fault. And it just seems like the, honor system, there's no honor system here. You go in on multiple layers and get assessed, and then a determination is made. And granted, there's ways you can gain the system. And the most common one I'll tell people is the hearing test. There's a whole thing about how to pass the hearing test to get your 10%. I don't believe in doing it. I could have, you could have, but we didn't do it. So fine, but okay, okay. Um, we give billions of dollars to people who are not Americans, and you're gonna freaking bust us over somebody getting a little extra.
And the
Why?
big thing too is when the Washington Post quoted things like that, like with tinnitus, that was basically a guaranteed 10% claim that people were getting. And then they're talking about, you get even more if you have dependents and a spouse. And it's like, wait, no, if you're only rated 10%, you don't get that additional money for a dependent or a spouse. You have to be rated 30% or higher before the dependent and spouse comes into play. So again, they're getting people riled up, and they're shaking the cages and trying to make us look bad, with this hit piece, and they're putting out information that's flawed.
And again, the other thing too is I'll tell anybody, look, there are Korean War, Vietnam War, and Gulf War veterans right now who will not go to the VA because they don't want to be seen as less than, who'd rather suffer,
Yeah.
who'd rather go without, who'd rather, worry and stress out and live in pain because of stuff like this.
Yep. And the fact that they're putting out things like this in a time when we're trying to work on people's mental health, and we're trying to help people not have to suffer in silence. And when you let them know the VA is there for them, it's not just there for people that are paraplegic. They're not just there for the most severe. They're there for every veteran who signed, every veteran who took that oath. They are there to support you and help you. It's, you're not taking money away from another veteran because you get care. You are just being part of a program that says, okay, next year for funding, we're going to need more because we've got more veterans in our care now. That's how it works. As they grow, they request more funding from Congress. Congress approves, and that's how the organization maintains. They're not taking away, money from that Purple Heart veterans that's missing a left arm because I need to be seen for, the tinnitus that I have, the ringing in my ears, or the back pain or migraines, or whatever you have going on, or depression, mental health things. Invisible, wounds are the hardest for people to go and claim. And the biggest thing is, you don't need to share what your percentage is and what you receive from the VA with anybody. That is your own private information. You can say, yes, I'm rated. Yes, I go to the VA. You don't have to tell anybody any of the financial benefits or the rating percentage that you're at for nothing. That's between you and the VA. I think people go out there and they talk about it, and other people that have nothing to do with the program get jealous of that, when in fact most of us would happily give back our rating and our benefits to have our bodies be whole.
I couldn't agree more. I have told people, like, look, you know what I get from the U.S. taxpayer every month. I'm with you. I would gladly give back every cent of it. Even if I got to do it over the course of a couple of years or even a decade, I would gladly give back every cent if I could have legs that worked half as good or be whole
Mm-hmm.
before I served. Or even, just give me like status quo legs for a guy my age. You know, they don't have to be new, but I mean that didn't go through the pain and suffering that I went through. I'll take that. Can you do that? No.
Yep.
Okay, then. It's not about getting stuff. Um, I got told that, hey, you're getting kicked out because you got injured. You can't maintain the Marine Corps standard. And then I got told, hey, well, based on that, we feel you should go to the VA and apply. I did. There's nothing wrong there. It's just I don't know. I'm not going to get the Washington Post account because I don't read the Washington Post, but from the snippets I'm seeing, it looks like a hit piece. Like, hey,
Yeah.
you know what? We'll throw veterans underneath the bus because they're getting benefits that we'd like to see other people get. And again, I mean, you can come in this country illegally, go right to the ER and get taken care of. You can come to the country, come to the state and get a cell phone, an EBT card, and a voucher for shelter and medical care. And you're doing this to us.
It's unbelievable. And
I
I'm
would think
getting
that
the
Washington's a better things to do than to do that. But and again, I'm not saying that I posted that link in the chat. I want you to post that you there. Yeah, this piece of work right here, $33.95 degrees of wheels, $16,566 to expedite claims. Almost $30,000 that he extorted people. And to me, I feel, and this person should be punished at the full extent of the law. He's getting sentenced here in 5 days.
Yep. So I got that scrolling on the bottom, the links down there, so that way you guys can see that it's what's going on, and you see that this is what's happening here. This is this person was out there taking money from our veterans,
He's a veteran himself.
to be able to
Michael Dare was a veteran. Michael Dare served in the Army. Michael Dare was a Ranger. Michael Dare was a Brockton cop.
It's just crazy, like to see this is what the person thought would be a good idea, and like to take advantage of folks. And we did an episode on this when this first all came to light, and we shared with folks, when you're going and you're getting help from somebody to do your claims, you've got your VSOs, you've got your your legions, your veterans of foreign wars, you've got your disabled American veterans, your paralyzed veterans. All those organizations will provide free of charge. You also have organizations that will provide, but they're trying to get X amount on the back end. So those organizations you need to be wary of, because if they're trying to get X amount on the back end, they're pushing for you to get claims on things you may not actually have, and because they want to make your claim higher so they can get higher. Say they're getting 20% for 5 months of helping you. So be careful of that. And there are newer organizations that are coming out using AI and using what's publicly available to us to be able to go out and be able to see and get help, understand how to write a nexus letter, how to get the documentation from doctors that you need, to make your claim, beefed up, because I think, gone are going to be the days of, writing a self letter and, even getting a buddy letter, doesn't hold the weight that, a doctor's note does, saying, you have this injury and this is what it does to you. You need to be able to, guys that are still in the service, get stuff documented. That's the best thing we can tell you guys is, before you get out, make sure you visit the dock, the aid station, wherever you can, and get it annotated. Been having, knee problems, ever since airborne school, been having, back problems ever since, this, incident overseas, or, this training accident happened where, we rolled over a Humvee, make sure all that stuff's annotated in your file. So when you do get out, you can have that, taken care of. And the best thing that I saw that was happening was when I went through the Warrior Transition Unit to get medically retired, was they did my medical retirement and my VA claim at the same time. They were, the stuff I was doing for my medical retirement, the doctors I was going to see and like the information I was getting there was also being provided to the VA at the same time. So that way they were getting the same information that the Army had, because they couldn't just talk to one another. That's the biggest flaw I see, is that, the VA should be able to go into your military medical history and see this stuff. Them not being able to do that makes it difficult. But never, let somebody tell you you have to pay your hard-earned money to be able to get a VA claim. It's unbelievable how many people fell to you know the Michael in Providence, the stuff that he was charging these folks, $5,000. There's times that some of these messages that they uncovered during the investigation said these people were choosing to go pay him instead of being able to provide housing or be able to put food in the refrigerator for the
Yep.
month. And that was the saddest thing is to see those messages going in to him saying I can't afford this right now because I'm not gonna be able to pay for my house or I'm not gonna be able to pay for food, and him saying, well, do you want this or not? And like that behavior is it's sickening. And like I said, as you look at the Washington, Post thing and this the second one come out, we'll touch more on it next week, for sure. And it's like they're coming after folks, and there are a lot of changes that are going to be happening in the VA. I know the secretary has talked about getting rid of CMP examinations altogether, saying if you submit a packet and you have information from a doctor and you have it annotated in your military file, why are you then going to see another doctor to confirm or deny it? Why aren't we going off of the information you've provided already?
Well, it's weird. Like, the quadricep rupture that I had, the VA, it's like, that's not related to your military service. And my ortho who opened me up is like, you could see that your tendon had deteriorated over time. It wasn't just like a instant snap. You could tell it because it's gotten stretched over time to the point where, you know, it had gotten damaged at one point, and they're like, well, we don't care. So, I mean, it is what it is. And again, look, I'm not going to, Mike and I are going to sit there and tell you that every veteran is honest and they're doing this for the right reason or the right way. We're not going to say that. But the number that are actually gaming the system pale in comparison to one, the people working at the VA who are not processing these claims correctly, and certainly pale in comparison to the veterans who desperately need to file claims, but for whatever reason chose not to. And then, okay, I would be completely behind this Washington Post article if you told me that, hey, you know what? We're not going to give money to illegal aliens or people that, are not Americans. And if veterans were truly at the front of the line getting taken care of first, I'd feel differently. But that's not the case. I mean, we have to, one, prove that we are Americans, prove that we served, or if you weren't an American, let me rephrase that. If you were not an American and served our country, you still have to prove that whole, case before you go. Then, get an honorable discharge before you even get a Band-Aid from the VA. And you're going to make this harder? I mean, I'm glad recruitment is up this year, but it just doesn't seem to mean what it used to mean.
And like you said before too, like there are so many vets out there that aren't even affiliated with the VA because they're either, they're too proud, they're too, they feel like they're taking away from another veteran, they feel like they don't deserve it. Like, and like, these folks need to know that, they do deserve it, but all you've done, everything that you've signed up and done, the government had no problem considering us, collateral damage for, whatever, war, use they used us for, even looking at, what they're doing with the DC Guard, sending them in and having them, do, trash bag cleanups of parks, they're doing that because they know that troops aren't going to say no. That troops can't stand up and say, we're not going to do that. Fuck that. The troops are saying, hey, this is your task. This is your mission. Go, execute. And, they're going to get it done. So it's like they'll use and abuse us for whatever they need. But when it comes time for us to, to ask for some help for, things that are, troubling us, years after, no, it's just I feel people aren't, giving us the same, concern and, care that, they had when they wanted us to do their mission versus us, asking for them to do theirs. We don't get the same back that we
it just
given.
irritates me because you fight to show that you have value post service. You have to fit in again to a society and culture that kind of for a lot of obvious reasons left you behind. You're trying to reintegrate. You're not feeling well. I mean, and I go back to the PACT Act. How many of those poor guys and women suffered with debilitating injuries, their entire inner body shutting down, liver disease, pancreatic cancer. I mean, you name it, because of the burn pits. Until there was finally like, okay, I guess that's really a problem. Now we'll fix it. And so, I mean, how about we look at ways to make this more transparent, look at ways to make this better, and look, if you're a veteran and you took advantage of the system, you get caught. Michael, I believe you deserve everything you get. You should be called out for fraud, and you should be made an example of. I feel about that the same way I feel about stolen valor, right? But it's going to hurt the people that the VA is trying to help more than anything else. And again,
Yep.
I just go back to my original point, ladies and gentlemen. You had an individual rubber stamp 100,000 plus claims. That's not the veteran's fault. But the veterans, whether they are legitimate or not, will pay the price for that. People like, well, no, they won't go back and look at all those. You bet you, yes, they will. 100,000 times 10%, is a lot of money in a month. They most certainly will do that. And if you go in and and God forbid, as much as I hate to say this, are they going to make the veteran pay the money back? That's kind of messed up. I mean, you acted in good faith and now you're being punished because you were. So it's not an easy thing. It's not a fun thing to talk about, but we have examples of people acting badly. They need to get, called out, and then we need to fix things up and shore up the problems. But I'm never going to blame the veteran. I'm going to give the veteran the benefit of the doubt. That those people writing that article, Michael, never did what we did and don't live like we live because of the cost of what we did. So you have time and energy to do this. There's plenty of other places in our government that have, big swaths of waste for fraud and abuse. So, not this one. Anyway.
And it does. It's just, the fact that they go after people and like that they're going to say all this is just tough. And it does tie into, what else you need to do is like, we have guys that, the biggest thing that you need to do is make sure, in the end, you got to take care of yourself, because, seeing how people are going to attack here and seeing how people are going to go after you, we're such a small community, and the amount of money that is spent on, veterans for X rating, you can actually even go and you can download, what the breakdown is of, what the percentages are that's out there, X amount of veterans getting 100% rating, X amount of veterans getting 10% rating, what the ratings are for, other things. And it's like, even like you look at things like, TBI, like we haven't caught up with what it's actually doing to folks, with the, the damage of concussions and the physiological, changes in the body that come after you're involved in a blast. And, we were talking before the show tonight just about this, and, just how like, we do all these things and things get, worked on time. But even now, like when I went to the VA for TBI, I got rated 0% because I had, 4 out of the 7 things that were the criteria for it. So it was like, they cover me for it, but it doesn't go so far. And then, I've done things with they've got like a study going on out of the Boston VA, where like they'll scan the brain and like go over things and see like how fast I'm able to do things and how long it takes me to go things, what I can retain over a 10-minute time frame, and things like that. And like I'm happy to be a part of those studies, so that way future generations will be able to see what has actually happened to our brains from these exposures and things like that. It doesn't even have to be combat. Your job, launching mortars, is going to lead to to impacts and to getting your head rattled here and there. And it's just like I don't think folks put all that into their critical thinking when they think of what vets are claiming and what we're putting through and and the fact that you have to fight for every little piece of that, like, is insane. Like, I know so many people, and a lot of their complaints in this article were, well, there's also this veteran out here that has a missing limb that's not getting any help. But if you say, what's the name of that person, let's get their information so we can get them connected to a DAV or an advocate or a lawyer or somebody to make sure that they do get their benefits. Nobody can ever give a name. It's one of those, a friend of mine, doesn't get their services. It's not so much, an actual thing. It's almost like an old lore that's just out there that, has kept people away from claiming benefits because they think that the more severely wounded aren't getting their benefits. So why should they get theirs?
It's regrettable. It's crazy. Again, I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. We certainly can point examples where it does happen. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be called out when it's found out. I'm not saying that at all. But I am just saying that, and what I'm trying to get to is some people think, well, you're 10, you're 20% disabled. I mean, life's great. Well, you find out, especially in our state, 20%, 3%, even 4% doesn't do you a whole lot in this state. It's not until you hit about 70% in Massachusetts that they actually really consider you disabled. And other states you can be as low as 3% disabled and get your property taxes waived. This state, you have to be 100% to get any kind of abatement at all, and so the max is what, $1,400.
Mm-hmm.
So no, it's not everything they make it out to be, and it's regrettable. On the other hand, to me, it's not so much about the money. I'm extremely grateful that I'm receiving VA care, because I'm like, the care I have received for things that have happened to me has been excellent. There's no question about it. But it's not just about the money. But if people think that you're going to the risk because you got your 10 or 20%, let me tell you, it doesn't go that far. It doesn't go that far at all, and it won't get you, anything out in the civilian world until they look at the federal mandate that tells them, okay, if a veteran's disabled at this percentage, I have to do this. It's like the commuter rail. We talked about this. You don't get a discounted pass until you're 70%. And I think it's no, it's only 70% and up. You get a discount. You don't get anything for free. And I'm like, fine, that's fine. But I mean, wow. I mean, you can have ankle problems, back problems, hip problems, and be at 3%. And walking from North Station to, Faneuil Hall or the government center might not be an option for you. That might be too painful for you. So I think what you said earlier really applies. Is if you are on the fence about applying for VA benefits, don't wait, but also do not engage with a service that's not a true certified accredited VSO like DAV, the Legion, the VFW, and do not pay somebody to do it for you who's going to take a cut of your, benefits. That's just wrong. Just
No,
wrong.
And like Sam says here, one of the most important conversations we can have with the troops is that seeking help is okay. That if they seek assistance is not taking help away from somebody, quote unquote, more deserving. He's had the same talk with soldiers and airmen alike, and it blows his mind every time.
Every freaking time, man. Every time.
And it is,
So
and Sam said that the benefit of being in, multiple branches and, he's, being able to have those conversations with the soldiers and airmen that he's led. It's it is tough to hear these guys, to say these things, to say that, they don't feel like they're deserving of the benefit when, it's out there for us. We sign a contract saying that, hey, you go and do this, you give X amount of your time, you give X amount of your life and your body and your, everything that you have, up into your entire existence for this country, and they'll take care of you on the back end. And not enough people come and say, all right, I'm on that back end. Can I get some help?
yeah, yeah.
And then what do you have tonight on Oscar Mike Radio?
So tonight is, and talking about benefits and getting help and stuff. We're talking about Navy SEAL veteran and former Sergeant of Arms for the Senate, the U.S. Senate, Frank Larkin, talks to me about his service and talks to me about the service of his son Ryan, who committed suicide. And at first, it was like, well, it's PTSD. And Frank makes the case that, hey, I don't think it was PTSD. I think the constant explosions, grenade blasts, breaching charges, gunfire, all those things had a cumulative effect on my son and his health. And the VA kept either A, wanting to give him pills, or B, told him nothing's wrong with him. And he's like, no one's looking at the physiological damage that's being done to soldiers when they train and work in these environments with the kind of weapons we have now. And it was a very interesting talk because when you think about it, it was the Civil War when, shell shock started becoming a thing, and it really didn't become part of the, vernacular until World War One, when, you had cannon, heavy duty machine guns, and tanks and other things, and artillery shells that were huge going off. And that's what they call it. They call it shell shock because something happened to your body. And it makes sense that, because think about how many guys you talk to, Mike, who are like, well, I'm not suicidal, but something is wrong with me. I'm not right. And they keep getting pills, they keep getting, this, go to therapy, blah, blah, blah. And what if it's that it's more than TBI? What if it's other parts of their body that are just impacted by, some of the things that they use? I mean, we talked about this, but think about what a mortar. I mean, you watch those mortar round videos. When they drop that mortar into the tube and you hear the boom, you can see the blast coming out of the bottom of the mortar tube, and it's hitting your knees, your ankles, your feet. And one thing I learned from my quadricep rupture, man, is everything's connected. Everything is connected. So he made a compelling case for it. I don't think we can discount it. And I would certainly hate to see us get in a situation where, well, that veteran's probably just sandbagging. He's probably just, being a malingerer. So we're not going to help him out. Sorry, denied. When he
Yeah.
actually did need help, he actually had something physically wrong with him. And when he went for help, he didn't get it.
Yep, I've got at the bottom. I'm sharing the link for the TRACS program, the Translational Research Center for TBI and Stress Disorders, and they are doing exactly what you're saying. They're looking at what's going on with guys, with the explosions, with the concussions, and how that is causing issues with their minds and beyond.
Yeah.
And then Sam has said, they mistook a physical issue for cowardice, though we still have a long way to go in terms of mental health. We've come light years in the past century. And Patrick says, "Hello, guys." Hey, Patrick.
Patrick. Wait a minute. He either ran for or got appointed to some senior position in DAV, right?
Patrick is a commander out in the. He's the commander of the Lowell DAV,
Right.
and he also is a DAV service officer. He does time over at West Roxbury and JP, I believe. So if you go in and you need to talk to somebody at the DAV to help with your claims, he is one of those guys that can get in there and get the information for you, and get your claim adjudicated, find out where it is in the process, and make sure you're getting the benefits that you deserve. And especially following the PACT Act that came out, Patrick was really one of the folks that was making sure that information was getting pushed out, whether they were going to Elks lounges, or they were going to Legions or VFWs, and sharing the information about the PACT Act, and getting folks to apply. That's another thing that's caused things to go up. Is you open more avenues for why folks are being connected for disabilities. With the hazards of burn pits, with the hazards of the water down at the Marine Corps base at Lejeune, with the Agent Orange and everything that happened during Vietnam. These guys, the environmental exposures that we've had, and things that cancers that were connected and not connected, and you look at all these things that have impacted the veteran community, and for a long time they weren't willing to say Agent Orange, caused these things. It wasn't until recently that they, came out and said, X, Y, and Z will now be stamped automatically that, if you have this and you served in these, areas of operation, that it's connected. And same thing with the PACT Act. If you served, in, Southeast Asia, and, you had, X, Y, Z happen to you coming home, it's going to be, presumed connected. We've had guys from our units that are dying before they're even reaching 50 years old from these rare cancers, and these things that just you wouldn't see a healthy 30 something from the greater Boston area wind up with. But because of the places we've been deployed to, and especially I think a lot of the guys that went early in Operation Enduring Freedom, they went to these bases, and one of the bases out in I think it was like KAF or something like that, like in it was either out in Uzbekistan or something. That one of these bases called K2 was the most environmentally hazardous base that the U.S. has ever sent anybody to. Like the soil samples they took and everything, like it was just causing a lot of health problems for our troops that have been out there, and and a lot of guys won't be able to claim stuff because they don't realize it's connected until it's too late.
Yeah. Well, I get ready for Oscar.
Like we had a guy that we were deployed with that started getting headaches, and because of those headaches, he wound up going home, and and he got diagnosed with an illness that wound up taking his life, and he was late 30s, early 40s, and it's just sad to see environmental exposures causing this to happen, and at the same time they're going to be mad because somebody's getting a 0% claim for acne, and it's like,
yeah.
And that's pushing against all the things that we're doing to try to prevent guys from suffering in silence, from guys going into isolation, from guys burying themselves into alcohol or substance use, and that's why we do these things, the camaraderie and coffee events, to be able to do things to get guys to communicate with other veterans and let them know what's going on, and being able to have those outlets when you're having an issue, to have somewhere to go to. So the biggest thing I can say is is don't fight alone, is have somebody you can reach out to no matter what.
For sure.
Anything else you want to throw in this evening, or we gonna call it so we can get you ready for Oscar Mike Radio?
I am Oscar Mike to do Oscar Mike, but thanks for bringing this up and bringing attention to it, man, because I don't want people thinking that, oh yeah, all veterans who are, receiving VA services or benefits are, malingers or gaming the system. Some of us really actually need what they provide, and it improves our lives. And I hate to see it get muddled like this, doing a real disservice.
Absolutely. And thanks for everybody for joining us tonight. Whether it's a few minutes at the beginning of the show, whether you're watching on the replay, we appreciate all the viewing and support, and look forward to coming back next week and sharing some more with you. And check in with Travis tonight wherever your podcasts are available: Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Facebook. It will be there 8:00. You'll be able to jump in the chat and talk with Travis himself during Oscar Mike Radio.
Thank you all. We are resilient. We are WAR. And
We'll see you
will
next
see
week.
you next time.